This book right here is called Helen Keller, The Story of My Life. It's an autobiography. If you're a young person, this is a very good first autobiography to read. An autobiography, in case you don't know, is a book written by somebody about their life. This book, Helen Keller, The Story of My Life, is written by Helen Keller. It's probably the only biography that I know that was written by somebody that was both deaf and blind. So it's not the longest biography, and it's not the most complicated biography. You know, like I said, it is written by somebody who is deaf and blind. Um, so you got to give her credit. I don't know where exactly I got this copy from. It's a very older copy. Um, doesn't look like maybe anybody has read it before. Um, I'm probably going to be the last and only person, or I'll probably be the last person to read this. It probably has been read before. In the inside book, we say, book pack, thousands used paperbacks, 4510 Salt Lake Boulevard, Honolulu, Hawaii. Looks like it's an old bookstore. $1.50 is how much it costs. Right. Okay. And it was $2.95 in the United States when it was first printed, so the resale was $1.57. The inside print, to Alexander Graham Bell, who has taught the deaf to speak and enabled the listening ear to hear speech. From the Atlantic to the Rockies, I dedicate this story of my life. Once again, let me remind you, this book was written by somebody who is both deaf and blind. Are you deaf and blind? No, I don't think you are, because you wouldn't be able to hear or see me. How many books have you read? How many books have you wrote? She was both deaf and blind, and she wrote a book about her life. Now, that's something that we take for granted, the ability to be able to see and the ability to be able to hear. If somebody went up to you and offered you $1 million for your hearing, like they'll give you $1 million in cash, but you can never hear anything again. You can never hear your favorite song again. You can never hear somebody talking to you. You can never hear the sound of the rain. You can never hear your cats meow. You can never hear anything again for $1 million. Would you do that trade? No, I don't think there's many of you out there that would. Okay, well, then you have something that's worth $1 million right now, because somebody that doesn't have hearing, they'll go out and buy the most expensive $1 million hearing aid, or they'll $2 million on them, however how much, or have the most expensive surgery, the $1 million surgery, anything that they're willing to pay for the ability to hear. So you already have something that's worth $1 million. And you know, the same analogy is true with your eyes too. But you know, you get it. I don't have to go through it again. You know, just make one up yourself. Okay, so the story of my life. For the first 19 months of her, this is just an introduction to Helen Keller, The Story of My Life. If you see the playlist, we'll have the whole entire autobiography on it. However, this particular video is just an introduction. So we're analyzing the book right here. The back cover here, let me read it. It's got a sticker. I'll go and pull it off. Might as well, you know, do anything. Like I said, books, they're not really in style. If anybody reads this again, it'll be like hundreds of years from now, because it was an antique. I'm going to be the last person to read this, I'm pretty sure. The inspiring true story. For the first 19 months of her life, Helen Keller is a normal child who laughs and plays and explores her surroundings. So she wasn't always she wasn't always deaf and blind. She wasn't born that way. For the first 19 months of her life, when she was up until a year and a half old, she was a normal student, a normal child. But a high fever robs Helen of her sight and hearing, leaving her alone in a dark, silent world, until the day Anne Sullivan comes into her life. Helen's only means of communications are crude signs and gestures. With the help of her new teacher and friend, Helen learns to read and write. Slowly, she begins to triumph over her handicaps. Complete and unabridged, a Watermill classic, printed in the USA. The story of my life. This is still the introduction. For the first 19 months of her life, Helen Keller is a normal child who laughs and plays and explores, but okay, we read that. This is the moving account of a remarkable woman and her devoted teacher, whose relationship has made the story of my life an autobiography of hope and inspiration. So like I said, this is an autobiography. It's a very great autobiography for a kid to read, for their first kid. To Alexander Graham Bell, who has taught the deaf to speak and enabled the listening ear to hear speech from the Atlantic to the Rockies, I dedicate this story of my life. This special and unabridged Watermill Classic edition has been completely reset in a size and style designed for easy reading, format, type composition, and design of this book are the exclusive property of Watermill Press. All rights reserved. No part of this book may be used or reproduced in any manner whatsoever without written permission from the publisher. Contents of this edition, copyright 1980 at Watermill Press. Printed in the United States.